Good morning, Internet world. Welcome to the Cross in the Desert, speaking hope and freedom to Iran. I'm your host, Randy L. Noble, and I'm so glad that you've taken out some time from your busy life to join me on the broadcast today. Have a very special, important program this morning. I'm going to be talking to a very good friend. She is a veteran radio producer and host in Canada, and I have been a guest on her show a couple of times talking about my book, Rahane, A Beautiful Fragrance. She's been so gracious to give me the opportunity to speak about Rahane. Her name is Narges Ghaffari. We have been Facebook friends, I think, about 5 years or so. And it is such a pleasure to know a veteran radio broadcaster in Canada like hers. She has the only Persian English radio show in Ottawa, and she's been on the air since 1995. That says an awful lot about her commitment as a human rights activist. And so it's going to be a wonderful time this morning. We're going to talk about Radio Irava, which is the name of her radio broadcasting company there in Ottawa. And we're going to be sharing a lot about what's happening with the Iranian regime and how they continue to oppress and destroy their people. We're going to talk about human rights and all kinds of other things that have to do with the Iranian regime. It is good to know that this administration has declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps a terrorist organization, and Canada is on the way to doing the very same thing. They need to be known as the state sponsor of terrorism all over the world. The oppression, the death, the destruction that they do bring, it is the Trump administration that has been the only one that has spoken out in such a powerful and concrete way. Of course, you know what happened under Obama. There was appeasement of the mullahs and billions of dollars of sanction relief money that was given to them. And what they used it for was not their own people, not to bring betterment and hope to their own people, but they used it to enrich the tentacles of their terrorism all over the world. And so this morning it's going to be a great privilege to talk to someone who is a veteran, someone who has been on the air going on, I guess, 24 years now, and has worked hard at her human rights to be a voice for the Iranians in Canada. I know several people that are human rights activists in Canada that are Iranian, and I'm thinking of Nazanin Afshin-Jam, who is currently leading a worldwide campaign to make sure that Nasrin Sotoudeh is released from prison. She has been in prison since June of 2018. And what is her crime? Nasrin spoke up for the women of Revolution Street who dared to remove their hijabs. Narges Ghaffari is my guest. She has been the host and producer of Radio Irava. IR is short for Iran. Ava means voice. The only Farsi Persian English radio program in Ottawa since 1995. Narges has been a committed activist in women human rights fields for many, many years now. Radio Irava has been the target of Iranian regime's embassy before it was closed by Canada's conservative government in 2012. Although she's not a stranger to online verbal attacks and threats from supporters of the mullahs, there is a recent development of an important matter due to the deep crisis that the regime is in, and we're going to talk about that. I want to welcome to the Cross in the Desert my good friend and radio producer, Narges Ghaffari, and thank you so much for coming this morning, Narges.
Good morning, Randy. How are you doing?
It is a familiar voice. I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy life to be on the radio program today. I just spent a couple of minutes explaining to our radio audience the human rights activities that you do on Radio Irava. And you've been doing that for quite a few years. That is an amazing feat. Tell us a little bit about Radio Irava, the different kinds of programs that you feature and the things that you talk about, and how this has been so effective for human rights for Iranians in Canada.
Radio Irava was established, as you said in the monogram, actually it was in January of 1995. There was no Persian radio show in Ottawa. So this one, Radio Irava, was the first one to be actually operated inside Ottawa. And at that time, we had the Iranian embassy in Ottawa, which was actually taking over the whole city. They had different activities. They were actually recruiting people at that time as well. And when we opened in 1995, there was a huge buzz about the Radio Irava. So some people thought we were from this organization. Some people thought we were supporters of the Iranian regime, and they are putting a woman's voice on the radio in order to trick people, which was obviously wasn't true. So there was a lot of buzz about that at that time. In 1999, the Iranian regime opened a cultural center in Ottawa. And through that, they were having activities such as celebrating Khomeini's life, which is the Iranian regime's founder, Islamic Revolutionary founder. And they were actually celebrating the revolution itself, and they were bringing other people, and they were attracting Iranians who had escaped Iran. They were attracting these people to their ceremonies, to their celebration, and they weren't very strict about women having hijab or not. It wasn't a big deal for them. So it was an attraction for a lot of people. So Radio Irava and a few other people gathered together, and we actually were successful of shutting down this cultural center in the mind of Iranian people who live in Ottawa, and showing them how this so-called cultural center is working. So this was one of our activities that we did, and it was successful. At the end, of course, the Iranian embassy was shut down by the Conservative Party and Mr. Harper, which are very, very, very grateful to him for doing this, because it was very, very important to us. We had actually worked for years to shut down this espionage center, because it was spying on dissidents. It was spying on the diaspora community in Ottawa and elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But because they had the embassy, they didn't have a lot of religion centers. In Toronto, in Montreal, in Vancouver, perhaps, they are working with the Iranian regime through religion centers, as I said, cultural centers. But in Ottawa, especially because there was the embassy, they couldn't spread their wings that much. So we in a way, we contained it with the help of the Iranian community. And Radio Irava, from the beginning, started with covering the news from Iran, the real news. I remember at that time there was no satellite television. Obviously, there was no internet as we have today. So we had to get our news with very difficulty, of course, but we tried to get our news from reliable sources, and we tried to get the news from the protesters in Iran. When you listen to when I listen to news from other sources, I couldn't understand why they wouldn't reflect the news of protests in Iran. They showed Iran as a country that has been actually a slave to this regime, which wasn't true. So this was one of our important points to get the news out of the protests, especially. And then we added the women's news, obviously for the obvious reasons, because I'm a woman, of course. And then the Iranian regime started attacking this radio, and a year after we opened the radio in 1996, they posed as the Iranian Association. We had an actual Iranian association at that time in Ottawa, and they posed as these people to the radio station, to CHUO, which I'm very grateful for CHUO for supporting us throughout these years. So they said that we are from this organization and we don't like what's being said in that radio show, and we wanted to be shut down. That's what they asked, and that's what they demanded CHUO to do, which they obviously didn't do. The real Iranian Association came up and set things right. And then, as you said, throughout the years, I've been receiving verbal threats, emails, profanity posts here and there. But this time, as you say, because the Iranian regime is much deeper crisis, it is important for your listeners to know how the Iranian regime works and operates and how they recruit people, actually. It's very important, and I think it's a delicate situation, and I'm very thankful to you, Randy, for letting me to talk about it.
This is very important, as you say, because we don't understand how they operate, but for us as human rights activists, we know that they spread their tentacles of terrorism all over the world. They go after refugees. They assassinate people they don't like. They have connection with Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations. And in your situation, because you are such a strong voice, being a voice for the Iranian people, because you're telling the news the way that it is, you're exposing them, they're going to attack you. Mm-hmm. You have a very serious situation that you're facing right now. Once again, the IRGC, we call them, the Iranian regime, are attacking you once again because of your powerful voice. And this is close to home. And as you mentioned, we need to understand how they operate. So if you could, share with us exactly what their tactics are now, how they're trying to silence your voice.
Sure. So I'm going to tell you what exactly happened for the situation. Last Monday, April 22nd, one of my relatives who lives in Iran and had told me a few days prior that he had something very important to tell me. So he called me and conveyed the intelligent organization of the IRGC. IRGC stands for Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And they had a message for me. They gave me 4 options, Randy, to choose from. And my choice would determine if anyone gets hurt or not. So this is very important. The first option is I stop all my activities against the Iranian regime in Canada. And this way, nothing is going to happen to me. That's what they told me. The second option is I return back to Iran, which I have to say to your listeners, I haven't gone back since I left Iran. So that is something that I would never do. The third option they gave me is continue my activism and stay in Canada, say no to them. And the last option is I stay in Canada, but cooperate with the IRGC Intelligent organization. And this is the point. You see, myself, I had experience with other journalists around the world, Iranian or non-Iranian. These 4 options are for most of them to attract people, to recruit them. So you see how the murderer of Iranian and Syrian people dare to threaten me who lives, I think my distance between Iran is 9,981 kilometers. So how dare they, and they have given me a week or 2 to think about this. Of course, I don't have to think about it, and I gave my answer publicly on my Facebook page. My position has always been clear and transparent. Therefore, my choices are clear, and my choice is to topple the Iranian regime in its entirety. And to reach this goal, I will use all the tools available to me, Randy. I also told the IRGC through my Facebook page that these threats have no effects on me whatsoever, and the only thing that will intensify is my activism against the whole Iranian regime. The life of Iranian regime is virtually over, and they will soon be in front of justice. And I hope we have them answer to all these genocide and oppression. Not even inside Iran. Randy, IRGC is a vast military organization that was established in Iran in the beginning of the 1979 revolution. Its objective and mandate, if you will, is to protect the Iranian regime. It is funny that I have to mention that there is no mention of Iran in IRGC. It stands for Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It has nothing to do with Iranian national, And IRGC is has many branches. I'm sure your listeners are familiar with Quds Force. This is one of the branches of IRGC, which is right now in the terrorist list of U.S. and Canada. And IRGC was recently put on the list as well, which I'm grateful for Mr. Pompeo and Trump's administration. IRGC inside and outside of Iran suppresses people, but it also has taken over the economy for many years now. I'm sure your listener, maybe yourself, has heard about the flood in Iran, the recent flood that has affected 28 provinces of the 31 provinces that we have in Iran. And people are dealing desperately. They desperately need help, and Iranian regime just ignoring them or cannot manage them, So this is the footprint of the IRGC is very very clear. We can see it. IRGC has sold many lands around the dams and dams itself, and also sold lands which have been used for the water rain, to drain the water rain away from the cities, especially in Shiraz when I think about 200 people died, but the Iranian regime is claiming 77, but there were more than that. And these people were travelers who go every year to Shiraz, because it has a very good weather. It's very nice, and they go there to visit their family and visit the cities. But unfortunately, because the water path was removed from where it used to be, and the water just kept going inside the city and just took everything with him. So IRGC also is involved in terrorist activities outside of Iran. It has troops in Syria, in Yemen, and other countries, and they are very, very active outside of Iran. And now we hear that they are very active in the South America as well. Another department, another organization, Randy, that Iranian regime has is the Ministry of Intelligence, MOI. And this is a terrorist organization as well. Not only suppresses and prison Iranians inside Iran, they have terrorist activities outside of Iran, and they are responsible for terroring the Shapur Bakhtiyar, Feridun Farrokhzad, which was a singer and poet, and the most recent activities, terrorist activities actually they had, was last June in Paris, and that they were trying to blow up the gathering of the Iranian resistance in that city, which was fortunately was stopped before made the damage. So this is the history of the Iranian regime. And the important thing that I say for your listeners that should know, as I said in the beginning, there are some journalists. I will give an example from Iran. So if one journalist comes out of Iran for getting disturbed by the MOI or the IRGC, they leave Iran, they go to outside of Iran, and they don't leave them alone. They get their family, they pressure their family members to pressure those people who have fled to go back to stop their activity. And these 4 options is, I guess it's a standard options, and they give it to everybody who want to persuade them to stop their activities. So some people give in, unfortunately, Randy, and some people don't.
You have been very courageous. They have threatened you. They have threatened your family. But you are a person that will not stand for those kinds of bullying tactics. You live in a free country. You're going to spend that time being a voice for the Iranian people. You're going to expose the corruption of this Islamic regime that has tortured, destroyed, and killed people for going on 40 years. And so they tried these tactics on you, and you said to them, no, there is no option for me other than I'm going to continue to be a strong voice. One of the things I like about your program, Narges, is that you keep us informed of the history of the Islamic regime and what they did to 30,000 political prisoners back in 1988. Khomeini, in his last desperate moments of life, if you will, ordered the killing of 30,000 political prisoners, and Canada has stood up against this with you. They have a special day set aside to remember them. So you have been instrumental in keeping people informed about the deadly history of the IRGC and the Islamic regime, haven't you?
Of course, I have been involved in that department as well, but it's really the Iranian people, Iranian freedom-loving people in Irava, and my close friend Sharam Golestani, who's been very, very active in that field for many, many years before Mr. Harper came to power even. But there's another event going on in Canada right now, Randy, and it's called Iran Accountability Week. This legislation was introduced to the Canadian Parliament in 2009 by Mr. What is his name? Sorry. Irvin Cutler, who used to be a member of the Parliament, but now he's not. But he's very active in the field of the human rights regarding Iran, and he is very, very active. So this legislation was, I'm going to read it to you what Mr. Irvin Cutler said. Irvin Cutler, the Liberal Party's Special Counsel on Human Rights, as I said, he used to be the member of the Parliament, he's not anymore, and International Justice, introduced legislation that will hold Iran to account for its genocide, genocidal incitement, domestic repression, and nuclear armament. So every year there's a gathering in Canada that they look at the human rights situation, the nuclear situation, and the domestic repression which is going on in Iran as we speak. I mean, it's not finished. It's not lowered. Nothing has been changed. It's the same, if it's not worse. So every year they gather and they invite some people to talk about what is going on in Iran and what should they do. And I like to, if people from Canada are listening to this program, I like to encourage my country, men and women, and Canadian people as a whole, to contact your member of the Parliament in your area and ask them to blacklist IRGC. By doing this, first, you help the Iranian people, of course. And the second is, we know that many relatives are IRGC members and their former members are living in Canada. Unfortunately, Canada has become a safe haven for them. They bring a lot of money and they can stay here. So I urge people to please to contact your member of the Parliament and ask them, because Canada last year in June of 2018, the Canadian Parliament actually passed a motion blacklisting IRGC as a terrorist entity. So, and the Prime Minister Trudeau was the first one to stand up and sign the papers. So this gives us another important tool to go forward and blacklist IRGC. And also because the U.S. has put them on their list, Canada should follow suit. I mean, it's a human rights situation, and Canada stands for human rights. So we must do what we can to blacklist IRGC as soon as possible.
Yes, it is very important, and what we have seen here with the Trump administration calling them the terrorist organization and taking a stand, I'm very grateful for my president, and I know that he would work with your prime minister as well, in standing up against this Islamic regime. He did what the Obama administration failed to do. He stopped the nuclear deal. He called it the worst deal in the world. He stopped the flow of money to the mullahs. And cutting off their supplies is very important. And blacklisting them is another step in the right direction. Narges, this has been now 40 years since the Iranian regime, and you think they're on their way to death. You think that they are crumbling, and very soon, there could be democracy and freedom in Iran. Is that your feeling as well?
It's absolutely my feeling, Randy. And look at the proof. The Iranian regime in Iran are facing protests every single day from people. I mean, there's no way they can last more than 40 years that they have. Outside the country, look at their nuclear activities. What happened? Everything is stopped. Look at their political relations with other countries. Every country that used to be friends with the Iranian regime, they're going away. They're distancing themselves from them. And of course, the sanctions, it's working very well against the Iranian regime. And I hope they can pressure more the Iranian regime. And you know, Zarif's trip, Zarif is in U.S. right now, and he is on a I call it begging trip. He's going to beg for negotiation with President Trump. And I heard the reaction from the State Department. They tweeted yesterday, and I'm going to read this tweet for you, Randy. It says, "It's not surprising that Zarif, the self-proclaimed human rights professor, who is the mouthpiece of the Iran's violent regime, comes to U.S. to enjoy the freedoms he denies the Iranian people. What is surprising is some people still give this hypocrite the light of day." So you see, the receiving of Zarif is very different in U.S. right now. Even 2 years ago, it wasn't the same. 3 years ago, it wasn't the same. So they are in a big hole that they cannot get out. And I hope that President Trump stays on course, stays on this path that is for the Iranian people. It's helping Iranian people, pressure the Iranian people. The oil embargo, the oil sanction is working, and Iranian regime is desperate to sell its oil. And of course, the moral support of President Trump for Iranian people is tremendous. And I hope that one day we can receive President Trump and American people in general to a free Iran and celebrate the freedom of Iran together.
Yes, and in fact,
and when you said, Randy, when you said that President Obama couldn't do it, I don't want to be disrespectful to President Obama, but I think he could do something. He chose not to do it. He had a lot of opportunities to do that, but he decided not to do it, especially in Syria. We remember his red lines. He didn't do anything. He just stayed inactive.
Yes, and it was during the 2009 presidential election that the protests were asking the question, President Obama, are you with us or with the mullahs? And you're right, he did not respond. I wanted to just end our little talk together with a tweet from President Trump back in January of 2018 during the uprisings. He said, "Such respect for the people of Iran as they try to take back their corrupt government. You will see great support from the United States at the appropriate time." So he is a voice like you for the Iranian people, and the Iranian people in a majority are responding in a positive way. And you've outlined for us today in our talk the dangers of the IRGC, the dangers to yourself, the dangers to your family, but you've also showed us they're crumbling, that this regime is in a death spiral. And so one day very soon there will be democracy. What I want you to end with, Narges, is let us know how we can connect with your program through social media so we can hear these interviews and hear the news that's true in Iran.
Yeah, of course, it will be my pleasure. They can go to my website at www.radioirava.com. My Facebook page is under my name, Narges Ghaffari. It's the same for my Twitter feed, and most of my interviews, Randy, is in Farsi or Persian, but I do have English interviews as well, which is on the website itself. They can follow the website and listen to it, and I hope that I have been able to make it a difference for even one person. And thank you so much, Randy, for giving me the time to talk about this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You've made a big difference in my life. You've been a tremendous voice, a tremendous support of what I do. But most importantly, you are a very strong, courageous lady. My thoughts and prayers to you and your family that you continue to be that strong voice, Narges, and look forward to you coming back and sharing your success with Radio Irava on my broadcast one day.
Thank you. Well, I hope one day I can come on and tell you that Iran is free. I can't wait for that day.
That's going to be the celebration of our lives. Thank you so much, Narges Ghaffari, producer of Radio Irava, and thank you for calling from Canada.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Randy.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye.
A tremendous, tremendous voice, a tremendous human being. And she really loves humanity in all that she does. She is a very strong voice for human rights and freedom. Have such respect for her. And please keep her in your thoughts and prayers. The threats against her are real. The threats against her family are real. She's taken a stand. She's being very courageous. So please keep Narges and what she's doing in your thoughts and prayers.